This is Alcohol Freedom Finders. This week we speak to the amazing Toni Will, who joined us in the same week that her TED Talk went live. Toni is a trailblazer and a disruptor who has broken many glass ceilings for herself and for women in general. Speaking of general, she is the general manager and governor of the Kalamazoo Wings, a men's professional ice hockey team in Michigan. A world dominated by men and steeped in drinking culture. So how did she learn not only to thrive in an environment like that, but also to find alcohol freedom while doing it? Well, listen in and let Toni tell you herself. Hi everybody, welcome to Alcohol Freedom Finders with me, Barry Condon, and my fantastic colleague, Justine Clark. Today we're really excited to have with us Toni Will. She is the general manager of a men's pro hockey team in the United States, which is pretty unusual. I think it's like 3% of people in the whole business there are women, let alone the general manager. So that's amazing. She's also a lifestyle coach. And like Justine and I, she's also a coach with This Naked Mind. So we're really excited. There'll be so much to talk about. Welcome, Toni.
Well, hi guys. I'm so excited to be with both of you. And we're spread out. Like we're all over the world, the three of us. So it's pretty cool.
I totally agree. I love the fact that we're spread out. This one of the things about This Naked Mind is it brings together from all over the world. Why don't you tell us a little bit about, I don't know, what drew you to This Naked Mind in the first place?
Yeah. So I was drawn to this naked mind because this wasn't my first rodeo trying to quit drinking. And in 2016, I stopped drinking. I got arrested for disorderly conduct. And as a result of being like, I'll call it brownout. I remember pieces and parts of it. But I was arrested and I carried a ton of shame around that. And immediately I thought, well, and I was already questioning my relationship with alcohol, but I thought, well, if this is the rock bottom everyone talks about, or whoever everyone is, right? And so I decided immediately after I was bailed out of jail that I would go to an AA meeting. And so I did that. And I was scared to death. I did, heaven forbid, I saw someone I knew, which would be ironic because we'd be struggling with the same thing, but there was real fear there. And I spent 15 months actually in AA, and I really enjoyed it for the most part. And I loved the community aspect. I loved being around people that, like, I just wasn't alone, right? But then, after a year or so, I'm like, well, it really wasn't that hard for me to stop. And I started to have these thoughts and I started to believe the thoughts. And I started to think, oh, AA is a cult, and which I don't believe, but I needed justification. So I had those thoughts for about, I don't know, 90 days. And then after 15 months of being sober, I went back out and I drank for 3 years. And after there was nothing in particular. It wasn't like some big arrest or anything. The next time, 3 years later, I was like, I'm so sick of myself. But I didn't want to go back to AA. It was at the beginning of the pandemic. And so I Googled other methodologies to stop drinking besides AA. And This Naked Mind popped up. So I ordered that book and I ordered the live alcohol experiment. And I decided to put myself in a 30-day Tony timeout. And that is how I found This Naked Mind.
Brilliant. Okay, so you read the book and it was lockdown. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so how was lockdown then? I mean, what led you to the sort of switch at that point? That it was the sort of the being cooped up at home or something else?
Yeah, I kind of felt like, so because I work in pro hockey and I stopped drinking in October of 2020. Normally in October, we're launching our hockey season. And our hockey season is long. It goes October to April, regular season. If we go to playoffs, we're playing till June. So I was working from home, but it was not nearly at the volume because the season was dark. So I had this opportunity to work on me. And so I said, Tony, you have a choice. You can sit and drink during all this, or you can work on you because you knew what it was like to be sober before. And the methodology really resonated with me. So I just decided to take the time to focus on me. And that really was the crux of it. I was just sick of myself.
I totally get that. It's that whole sort of alter ego of yourself that is running most of the show, where you're aware that you're running it. There's a duality of life where there's the one part of you that is going, what time today will I start to drink, or won't I drink today? What am I going to drink if I am going to drink? how much is too much, all of that. It's so tiresome, right? We all have different struggles within that journey. And I think when people listen to people that have stopped drinking, they assume that they have some kind of magic trick up their sleeve and somehow they're lucky or they're different, or, you know, they don't have the same gene. What about, so I'd like to talk about a little bit about the struggle. So for you personally, what did you find the biggest struggle about, particularly because you went back to it, right? What did you find?
Yeah.
What did you find the struggle between, I've decided I'm not going to drink again anymore?
Yeah, well, the first thing I'll note is that I didn't know it at the time that I was doing lengthening as a tactic or strategy, but that's what I employed. And so I chose to take a 30-day break. And then I kind of reevaluated it after that. So I did the 30-day alcohol experiment. And then I joined another program called Sober Sis and extended it out 21 more days. And then it was after those 6, 7 weeks where I was like, I think I'm done. Right. So it wasn't a light switch. It wasn't like on October 12th of 2020, it was done and the light switch went on and the light bulb over my head went off and life was good. No, it was hard.
Yeah.
It was a giant identity switch because my friends called me Tony Party Time, and which I hated. I mean, I laugh now because it is kind of funny, but it is fun. I mean, that's just who I was. I mean, I was the straw that would stir the drink. You know, if I was showing up into a place, it was going to be fun until it wasn't. And so, yeah, it was definitely not easy. And I would say the identity piece was really hard, and then challenging all those beliefs around like my list of why I drank. And the number one belief at the top was for fun. And I had to unwind all those beliefs. And I did. I still have my list. I kept it and I use it in coaching quite often.
That's brilliant. I mean, I can so relate to that. I thought, there would be no fun, once I stopped, and I stopped. It's kind of that, and it was a sort of spontaneous. You stopped, but then thought, well, how do I make this okay? And went looking for did the same googling that you did, and found Annie Grace and other quit lits that made me realize, there must be, another way of looking at it than AA. I mean, what was your? So you obviously had a decent time the first time round in AA, but what was it you sort of thought, I don't want to go back? What did you think you might find elsewhere, and how would you talk about the difference between the two options as the sort of traditional method and this naked mind method, for instance?
Yeah, what really pulled me away from AA was, well, number one, it's a 100-year-old framework. And so it was very male centric. And I'm not anti-man, by the way. It's not like that at all. But it was more, the women are at home and the men are out drinking and earning money and all that. The framework was kind of archaic. And the other thing that I really struggled with was the stigma and the notion of being powerless. And because I do not believe that I'm powerless, I actually believe I'm powerful. And so I don't subscribe to that. And I think the language we use is really important when it comes to something that's so stigma packed. So there's so much stigma behind quitting drinking. And so that's why I was just like, I need a different way to look at this.
If you're looking to take back control of your drinking, why don't you join our Alcohol Freedom Finders 30-day group program? It's a great place to start because we approach it as an experiment rather than a challenge. Whereas, as well as getting a great detox, you learn the science and the psychology about why you're drunk in the first place. So whether you want to stop altogether or just become a more mindful and moderate drinker, why don't you give it a crack? Use the link in the show notes to sign up to our next Alcohol Freedom Finders 30-day program, and you won't regret it. Because no one ever woke up in the morning and said, I wish I'd had more to drink last night, did they? Now, back to the episode.
And what really resonated with me, I was sold on the book basically when Annie talked about that rebel tendency, because she identifies as a rebel. I do too. And really thinking about this in a space of, because I choose not to drink and I live alcohol free, and that language is important. That's what, rebels do, because we choose to be the minority in color outside the lines, like I like to say. So the language made sense and it felt empowering. It didn't feel like something was wrong with me.
Yeah, I so love that answer. And I so love that you're talking about the stigma. Barry and I were talking about that just the other day, about how actually, first of all, we have to start to live with ourselves going, God, I have to acknowledge that I am drinking more than I want to be drinking. And then you have this kind of battle going, how do I, because I'm secretly drinking more than I want to be drinking, right? You're not even telling yourself that. And then how do I secretly unpick all of that? Because there's such a stigma around it. I don't want to do any formal method to start with. I just want to try and work out what is the right amount for me? How do I, what is the right amount? So because you are where you are, and you have an amazing job, and you're a businesswoman, that stigma is huge, and there'll be other women and men like you that have an inkling that they need to reframe their relationship. What would you say to someone who is really feeling the stigma?
Yeah, so there's this what I hear you referring to is like this inner knowing, and I had an inner knowing that my relationship with alcohol wasn't quite right, and I knew that. Well, I mean, back when I got arrested, and I went through IOP, which is um, inpatient program or intensive outpatient program, and I was diagnosed with alcohol use disorder. And so I didn't even have an inner knowing, I had an outer knowing too, because I was like, I had all the knowings. So it's like I had all the signs. It was just really believing it and accepting it, and also accepting the fact that certain rules do apply to me. Like if I know internally that something's off, then to listen to that. I tell you what, that by removing this one substance from my life, I have opened up so many other doors. And we were talking off air before we hit record about my TED talk. And I never in a million years would have thought I'd be on a stage doing a TED talk, let alone a TED talk, or talking about why I quit drinking, and oh, thank you. And like never, right? So, or starting a business, because I'd have to tell everybody, like, how are you starting a business, Tony, and about quitting drinking? Like, how would you know to do that? Oh, I don't know, because I drank too much. Like, so I decided that I would tap into all that rebel side of me and say, yeah, I'm going to do this. And because of these choices and that inner knowing and just listening to that, how far it can take you. But you have to be willing to like acknowledge it. Just a willingness. You don't have to do anything about it. I tell my clients this all the time. Just a willingness. You don't have to move to action yet, but willing to consider.
So just to say, what does that look like as a statement or a phrase, or what might they be able to reframe? Yeah. What does that look like?
Yeah, so I would putting myself back in that, I'm willing to consider that my relationship with alcohol isn't what I want it to be. And I think that language is important because what I want it to be, and I have to define that. Well, what did you want it to be back then, Tony? And I wanted nothing more than my governing belief was to have it all. And I'm using air quotes if no one's watching this, but listening, because my definition of having it all was coffee in the morning, wine at night. They were my bookends to the day, ramp me up, pull me down. Right. And so it's like, why is that? What is having it all? Did I have a willingness to consider that having it all actually took those two things out, and I already had it all and then some if I didn't have coffee or alcohol? So I removed both at the same time back then, and I experimented with that. And yeah, so it's this asking, like defining, what is that definition of, for me, was having it all, and why was alcohol such a big part of that picture?
Well, you talk about having it all. I mean, being the general manager of a pro hockey team, and having had a successful career before that, was there sort of, to the outside world, I'm sure that people thought, she has it all, and and then how in that sort of position of authority, in a position of with people looking up to you, how did you approach telling people that, or did you tell people to begin with, or how did you come out of the closet of saying, actually, I had a problem and I'm not drinking anymore?
Yeah, that was, oh, did I grapple with that? Because my job is public facing. And I thought, what if I come out and tell people this and I get fired? Or, I don't know. I mean, we future trip all the time and, all this stuff. And I just said, you know what? If I'm going to get fired or someone's going to dislike me because I choose not to drink, then it's not meant to be my job. It's not, those people aren't meant to be in my life, whoever, all the stuff I'm dreaming up. So what I did is around on day 80, I wrote a social media post because I love a good loophole. And I knew if I didn't tell my story, because on social media, you can frame your story the way you want, right? It's your social media, you get to write it. And so but I wanted to talk about it publicly because I didn't do that before when I was in AA, because a big part of AA is being anonymous. So I kicked anonymous to the curb and I said, I'm going to own this in the way that feels comfortable to me. So on day 80, I posted about I was 80 days alcohol free and why I was doing it. And that I'm hoping to shine a light on this for people during the pandemic who don't want to overdrink and want to stop. And that's, I call that macro managing, like holding things loosely. I talk about it in the TED Talk. It's part of my leadership pillars. And a part of it was just telling on myself so I could free myself from the stories I was telling myself in my head of what others would think. And here's the thing, spoiler alert, I didn't lose my job. And everyone in my life has been wildly supportive. And I mean, there's been so many people that have come along in the journey as well. So
I can imagine that the world of men's hockey is fairly alcohol centric as well, and that so it would be extra nerve wracking to sort of come out to those kind of people.
well, 100%. And one of the things I talk about when I facilitate sessions, like I just got back from Boston yesterday and from the National Sports Forum, and I facilitated a session on how to 10x your sales in sports. And one of those things is networking, right? That's a way we think and what comes with networking, with drinking and in sales, there's this belief, and I used to have it, that in order to sell and make connections, you got to belly up to the bar. And I completely dispel that and say, it's actually, you want to do business with the people who aren't bellying up to the bar because they're the ones up early in the morning working out, who are clear headed and are there to do work. Those are the people that you want to be connected to. And it's funny to watch these light bulb moments go off because I'm like, those conversations you're having when you're drinking aren't as authentic as you think. And, and as they start to consider that, they're like, oh yeah, we didn't think about that. So it's just, the more that I can teach and the more that I can show a different way in the hockey world specifically, and that actually at that conference, it was all levels of sports, all sports. It doesn't matter what sport it was, just to be able to say, you don't have to drink to fit in. You fit in even better just by being your authentic self without being all boozed up.
Yeah, I completely love that. And I think that you've spoken to the two biggest things, the two biggest stigmas is generally telling people, your partner, your friends, anybody to start with. I think so many of us early in the journey sit in that space of trying to just go it alone. So telling people is so key. And then the second part is, how do I do me going forward? How do I do me at work? How do I do me at Christmas? And what you're speaking to is the discoveries that happen on the other side of starting to find what it's like to actually be you. So we've talked about, the work reframe. What other things do you think you've learned about yourself in doing you?
Yeah, I think that, so because my job, like they're intersected, right? Because what's happened is my worlds personally and professionally they've kind of morphed into one. But I'm more confident in all areas of my life because I choose not to drink. I know who I am now, through and through. I mean, warts and all. And that's okay. I'd rather have, like, my worst day being alcohol free is like nothing. I mean, it's just easy compared to like being hungover and all. And I've dealt with some really challenging things in my 4.5 years of being alcohol free. Justine and I were just talking about when I interviewed you on my podcast, my mom passed away on February 9th. And after a very long battle with Alzheimer's, and I was in the room, I was present, and not just there, they just live a half hour from me, or my dad does now, but I was there for all of it. Right. And I just got into a car accident on Sunday on the way to the airport and totaled my car by hitting a deer the day after my mom's funeral. But here's the beautiful thing. It was an early Sunday morning drive to the airport. There was not a care in the world because I wasn't partying Saturday night trying to get to the airport on time, smoking a deer and worried that I smelled like booze. Like like there's so much freedom in that. There's so much freedom in all of that and just being authentic in all my spaces and having my faculties. And I really truly mean this. I feel so empowered by the choice. And I want to also say this. It didn't always feel that way. That first year and a half was tough. It was tough because my brain was screaming at me, Toni, you need alcohol to live. Because that's what we do. We condition our brain to think that way. It's not my fault, but I had to really work on it. It did not come easily. And one more thing I will say, Justine, that I believe one of the silver bullets is telling people. And that's hard for individuals to hear because they're like, no, I don't want that to be the thing, Toni. And I'm like, no, but it is the thing.
Yeah.
You
that's
do.
brilliant.
100%. I'm with you
That's
there.
brilliant. I'm so sorry to hear about your mother. I know how that is. Justine and I both lost a parent in the last year, and yeah, it's never easy. But you're so right. When you can be there and process it and feel it in the moment, and we think, we're taught, for every occasion, celebrate, commiserate, deal with pain, drink, drink, drink. That's what society, our culture, throws at us as the solution to everything. And I know that in the past I would have done that, and you push down the feelings, and you probably make a mess of other relationships around, say the wrong things, and it's so often that families end up falling apart around losing someone. And I know that this time, my brother doesn't drink either, and my sister doesn't really drink very much either, and my mum was off the booze as well at the time, and it really allowed us to be together, and it was a sort of unexpected benefit that I felt this year. Wow, that's great. But we skipped over your TED talk, and we can't do that. That's just too unbelievable. So it was the TED talk. I have actually watched it, but for people who haven't seen it yet, you speak wonderfully about your business, but you also talk about alcohol as well. That how did that all come about? How were you approached, and how did you come up with your whole talk?
Yeah. So one of the things I'm wildly passionate about beyond living alcohol free is lifting women up in general, which is why I have my podcast, Women In ... And I have men and women on. Justine's already been on. Barry, you're coming on next. You just don't know it because I'll email you that after we're done here. But I want to lift women up because for so many reasons. But so that's kind of where this started. One of my coworkers within the marketing hospitality world emailed me or texted me. She sent me a screenshot. She said, you should apply for this. And it was for the TED Talk, and it was being hosted here in my hometown. And I thought, okay, yeah, I'll email the organizer and say I'm interested. TED Talk's never been on my bucket list. I watch them. I refer clients to them a lot, like watch this because there's so many great talks out there, but it's never been something I wanted to do. But I do love to public speak, so I don't know why it wasn't on my list, but it wasn't. Anyways, so they emailed me like 6 weeks later. They're like, yeah, we'd love for you to apply. This is hilarious. I go, you have to apply for this? Like I had no clue. So I'm in an airport and I'm like, fine, I'll apply. And so I took 5 whole minutes, like zero thought. And not that I blew it up, and I was like, oh, I thought they just wanted me. Anyways, so I apply. And then I heard like 2 months later, I got an email because I'd forgotten about it that I was selected. And I was happy, but I didn't understand the gravity of it. And then I was having kind of a crappy day. And so I'm like, well, I'll share this on social media that I'm doing a TED Talk. So I did, and it exploded. And I'm like, oh, this is a really big deal. So I laugh at my naivety sometimes. And so what happens when you apply for a TED Talk is they really hook you up with writers, coaches, training videos on how to craft a talk. And I had just under 100 days. And so I took the course because I had not researched this at all. And then I started working with my coaches and with a writer. And I said, you want me to write every single word out? And my writer kind of giggles. She goes, yeah, Toni. And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. So I started working on it. And my husband, he's just fantastic. He was really a partner in this, and he helped me fine tune it along with my coaches. And it ended up being 7 pages of dialogue. And it took me every bit of those 90 plus days to memorize it. I chose, if I'm going to do a TED talk, I'm going to do a TED talk and I'm going to memorize every single word. And so I did. And I just got published. Like I did it in October, and then it takes some time for it to go through the TED platform and all their approval processes. And so it got published last week, and I got to see it with all of you because I didn't get to see it. So I was really proud of it. And how I decided on what I was going to write, I really wanted to tell stories around being a minority in sports, but also being a minority choosing not to drink, and how I did that, because I want other people to be able to walk away and say, oh, I can do that. And so that's the stories and the idea I shared.
You know, what's really incredible about that is that people think, lucky Toni, she got to do a TED talk. Lucky Toni, she's got a great job and is, alcohol free. But what you've shown there is actually that bit that's going on beneath the surface. You memorized every word of a 7-page script. And I don't know if anyone else has been through menopause out there, but that gets tougher to memorize. It does get tougher as we get older to memorize things. That's totally extraordinary. And I just think you're an inspiration to women, and you really are living up to all the things that you aspire to be in your core values.
Thank you. Yeah.
If you had a gift, a little present wrapped up beautifully that you could give to yourself, let's just go back, maybe give it to you in, I don't know, maybe even 15 years ago, if you could give yourself a little gift, what would that be?
When I think about 15 years ago, Toni, I was 31. I would say just keep trusting your gut. I really would. I would do it all over again. All of it. And because it's made me where I am today. So the gift would be a little note that I wrote to myself. Just keep going, Toni. Just keep going.
Yeah. See, that's extraordinary in itself as well, because what you're saying is the answer is be authentic, be vulnerable, be yourself. And I've probably gone ahead and, we always ask this last question, what 3 words would describe your journey? Yours will be different. So yeah, what 3 words would describe the biggest takeaway in this journey so far?
So my 3 words might be a little different. And I have listened to your podcast because you have some fabulous guests, some of which I know. So I'm always like, oh, I want to listen. I heard about it. And so I started listening to this. Mine might be different. My 3 words, I'm going to keep it PG because I'm following rules. I'm not going to be a rebel right now. But my 3 words are let's frickin' go.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. No, I mean, yeah, and that's amazing. And do you miss Toni party time? How do you find fun still now without your alcohol partner?
Yeah, I do. I don't miss her at all, actually. I actually think fondly of her in the sense that she got out of that part of her life what she was supposed to. And I think good for you, Toni, for man, you let her rip. And somehow I stayed above ground. I don't know how, but I did. So yeah, I don't miss her, but I really enjoy me. Like now I have so many more layers to me, and I'm a lot more empathy. I'm not selfish. I'm not driven by where can I get my next drink. So yeah, I'm I really am at peace with like this part of my life. What do I do for fun? I do talk about that in the TED Talk, but I love watching true crime. I'm a big like true crime buff. I love to read books. I read my age every year, so I'm reading 46 books this year or more. I listen to my age too, meaning I listen to at least 46 podcast episodes that are not mine because that's cheating, but I do listen back to all of mine. And then I love to travel. So and that's just some of the stuff I do to have fun. I mean, my husband and I are goofballs. We just do funny things and laugh all the time. I laugh more now than I did back when I thought I was having fun with alcohol.
Brilliant. And so tell people where they can find you and who are the sort of, what sort of people are you looking to help? Obviously women, but in your own words.
Yeah, so I can be found. So if you're interested in the hockey side of my life, kwings.com. K is in Kalamazoo, which is where I'm from. Wings with an S.com. My coaching business for lifestyle coaching is mindfulnesselevated.com. And then I have a professional development coaching business too to help people break through their own personal glass ceilings in their career. And that's ToniWillCoaching.com. I'm on all social media. Well, not all. I'm on 3 social media platforms: LinkedIn and Facebook at Toni Lentini Will, and Instagram at I'm Toni Will. And then I coach actually both men and women. I find that the type of client that is attracted to me is generally high achieving, values wellness, health and wellness is part of their, approach towards the alcohol coaching or the professional development coaching. Because once you remove alcohol, you're just kicking butt on your career side of life too. So, but I that's typically the type of client I attract, and I coach clients all over the world. So that's the beautiful thing about technology.
Brilliant. We'll get all that in the show notes, all your links.
Thank you so much for being
Awesome.
with us. You're an inspiration to me, and it's been such a pleasure talking with you.
Oh, you guys are fantastic. Great work. And I love being in great company with this Naked Mind coaches. There's nothing better than this group of people, I tell you.